Okay, good afternoon. This is my third and last intervention of today. And in this one, I was asked to talk about the open data policy of the European Union and the PSI directive. You might remember from Marta's overview presentation of what our unit does, the implementation of this policy and of the PSI directive is also one of the activities that the unit does. I want to make a disclaimer. I'm not directly involved in these activities, so it was interesting for me now to prepare this presentation. My task was to link it also to the language resources and to the efforts that will be undertaken in the language resource coordination and within CEF. So I found this task interesting. So mainly in these slides you will see my ideas or some thoughts we have had, and maybe you have other thoughts on that can complement that. So I will present an overview of the different aspects, elements of the policy, open data policy. I will stress, also highlight to you new developments in that policy, and then link to the language resources and the CEF contract. So the term open data refers to data made available free of charge for reuse to everyone for both commercial and non-commercial purposes. And the open data policy is about ensuring that public sector information, PSI, that means all the information that public bodies in the European Union produce, collect, or pay for with taxpayers' money, can be further used by anyone for any purpose and free of charge. And key examples, or some examples of these of public sector information, are geographical information, statistics, weather data, or data from publicly funded research projects. So opening up governmental data for reuse can have major benefits for citizens, businesses, and society, and also for the governments themselves. So it means, for example, increased transparency and better accountability of public administrations and governments, but also possibility to create innovative products and create growth and jobs by the private sector. So it is an element, open data is an important element of a wider strategy aiming at enhancing the transition towards data-driven economy. And the elements of that strategy were presented in the recently adopted, July 2014, Commission communication towards a thriving data-driven economy. And open data also contributes to the digital single market strategy of Vice President Ansip. So open data and open data policy are elements of a wider data strategy of the EU, and the data is a top priority, which was recognized already by the European Council in October 2013. And there the governments were encouraged to actively promote the reuse of public sector information. It was recognized that for Europe to become a data-driven economy, data must be available and accessible, and the governments are in the privileged position to make valuable data available. So these Council conclusions of October 2013 were followed by the Commission communication that I mentioned on thriving data-driven economy, which is the first ever EU-wide initiative addressing data in a holistic manner. So here I gathered some quotes from that communication. The communication says, among other things, that the EU must extensively share, use, and develop its public data resources. The communication also sketches the necessary features of the data-driven economy, and one of these characteristics of such thriving data-driven economy is the availability of good quality, reliable, and interoperable data sets, including open data. As for data sets themselves, they are defined to be good quality, reliable, and trusted data coming from large data sets, including open data. And in the communication, examples of such data sets are given, and their language resources are mentioned as an example. The communication acknowledges that the Commission is releasing their own documents as open data through the EU Open Data Portal, and it also sets out a number of concrete actions to support and accelerate the transition towards a data-driven economy, and among these actions there are actions in the area of open data. What are these actions? These are the relatively new things. So it proposes setting up of an open data incubator, which will help SMEs set up supply chains based on data, promote open or fair access conditions to data resources, facilitate access to cloud computing, promote links to local data incubators across Europe, and help SMEs obtain legal advice. An example of such open data incubator is the Odine project. I will talk about it a bit later, which was selected in the first call for proposals of Horizon 2020, and it started its operations in February this year. A second action that was announced in the communication as regards the open data, it says that a pan-European open data portal under the CEF program will be set up, which will provide a one-stop shop to open data across the EU. So here, for those who might be confused, the EU open data portal, where the European institutions make their data available, is one thing, and that exists already since a couple of years. The pan-European open data portal, which is, by the way, the pan-European open data DSI that we talked about earlier, that will only be created now, and it will link the different open data portals on different levels: regional, local, national, European. So this slide just summarizes the elements of the open data policy that the unit deals with, and I'm not sure if this is a comprehensive list, but at least this is the list of what in our unit we are doing. So an important element of the open data policy is the updated legal framework. In 2013, there was a revision of the PSI directive, and this directive is to be implemented, is to be transposed, into national legislation within 2 years, which means by July 2015 it should be implemented. I have the latest update that I have is from March 2015, which where I found that 2 member states already implemented the directive into their national laws, that is Greece and Denmark. Other member states are in different stages, but in most cases the draft bill has already been consulted both with the public and across the government services, and in few cases the law will be adopted by governmental decree, so there is no parliamentary discussion involved. Then the PSI directive is complemented by the PSI guidelines, because the directive calls on the Commission to help the member states implement the new rules by issuing guidelines. The guidelines are on recommended standard licenses, data sets, and charging for the reuse of documents. So these guidelines were published in July 2014, and they are an important element of the Commission's effort to help the EU's economy to generate more value from the data. And the third element of this legal framework is the decision of the Commission, the decision on the reuse of Commission documents, which dates back to 2011. The legal framework itself is not itself sufficient to ensure the wide and open reuse of public sector data, so there are other initiatives that we are following. So I mentioned already through CEF we have started the building of the pan-European open data portal, which will federate content published on any public open data portal, of which there are more than 70 throughout Europe at various levels. And finally, there is the ODINE Open Data Incubator for SMEs, which will set up an environment to support and advise SMEs and startups in creating commercial added value from open data. So we are doing all this, and we are also trying to lead by example. It was mentioned already several times today and yesterday. The European Union Open Data Portal is the portal of European Union itself, where the top resource, and this is the link to the language resources, is the translation memory of the DGT with over 11,000 views. And the third resource is the Eurovoc. It's not marked on my slide, but it's also a language resource. The ODINE, the incubator, as I said, it will set up an environment to support and advise SMEs and startups on generating value of open data. It will launch, how it will do that? It will launch calls for mini projects for up to 100,000 euros, and will set up an environment and a network, including business angels, venture capitals, and funding agencies to support SMEs and startups. It will provide an accelerator program, and technologically, it will set up a platform that will support the life cycle of the open data from its generation, publication, and storage to the subsequent usage by the participants of the program. So the project is running since February, and the launch event of the project and the launch of the first call for mini projects will happen at the World Wide Web conference in Florence in May, 19th of May. So we invite you to follow up closely these upcoming calls of ODINE, because part of ODINE's mission, and in general of the Horizon 2020 big data project, is to promote sharing and interlinking of data across borders and across languages, and improving the availability and usability of language resources, and especially of multilingual parallel corpora, terminologies, and taxonomies, has the potential to enable such cross-border, cross-lingual linking. So follow up on this. So I have mentioned before the Pan-European Open Data Portal, which is under construction under Connecting Europe facility. So what it will be. So based on the experience from an existing pilot portal, a comprehensive pan-European open data platform will be deployed, and the beta version of the portal is expected in November 2015, and then version 1.0 in January 2016. It's also a service contract within CEF, which has recently started, and it's also run from our unit. I mentioned open data portal, that it will use automated translation platform to provide multilingual support. So automated translation platform will provide multilingual support to the open data portal. This is one thing. Now I'm talking about the other thing. Open data portal can be a good way of promoting, disseminating, and making more reusable and visible the language resources that will be gathered in the context of CEF automated translation platform. So what will the Pan-European Open Data Portal do? It will aggregate the open data provided through national, regional, and local open data portals. So obviously, if language resources are published on national data portals, they will be ingested into the European portal. So it would be nice, just a message from my side, to in some years see the language resources on the Pan-European Data Portal as top scoring language resources with most views and downloads. The Pan-European Open Data Portal will also offer advanced visualization capabilities, tools for data aggregation and linking, browsing and visualization, and services. It will also offer services around open data. The purpose of this portal is to make the public sector data visible and encourage their uptake and the development of innovative products and services based on data. And that's why the deployment efforts to deploy the portal, they will be accompanied by training and workshops and maybe not workshops, but awareness raising activities in the member states aimed at fostering the data supply to the open data portals and activities fostering also the uptake of open data resources. So now to bring it back in the context of language resources and the work that will be done by Joseph and the team. What does the open data policy and the PSI directive mean for the language resources and in particular for the language resource collection? And how can we maximize the reusability of the language resources that will be provided by the member states' administrations also for other stakeholders, for example, to create innovative products? So it was mentioned before that it can be expected that maybe not all, but many language resources that public authorities hold, that they fall into the remit of the PSI directive, that they are public sector information which were created with taxpayers' money and should be made available as open data, in open data portals. Currently, when I looked at some of the national open data portals, I didn't see many language resources there. So I think open data portals are a good way to disseminate the openly available language resources. As was mentioned in the previous panel, the other non-open language resources, those which have some sort of confidentiality requirements or licenses, we will find another way for dealing with them. So we would, for those resources that public authorities would be willing to release only for the purposes of the CEF automated translation platform, they will be subject to other arrangements. We will have another storage capability for that. So what I think is that in the awareness raising campaign about the importance of language resources for improving the multilingual support in public online services, the member state authorities and the public administrations need to be reminded of their obligation to make public data available through the national open data portals. So this is, I think, an important issue. And also the consortium that presented, they should support, and they said they gave their intention to do that. They should support the authorities with advice on how to make language resources available as open data, as well as on suitable formats that maximize the reusability of the language resources. And the help desk that was mentioned should provide guidance on that. So Khalid presented that one of the main tasks of the language resource coordination action will be to organize training workshops in member states and teaching and making how to make language resources available for the purposes of the CEF automated translation. And I mentioned earlier that one of the tasks that is accompanying the deployment of the pan-European open data portal is to foster the data supply. So they will be going to the member states and training them and encourage them and support them to publish additional public data resources on open data portals. So I think we should look for synergies in these activities and make sure that we pass a clear and consistent message, and that's what I wanted to say.